Hello, and today we're going to be looking at what is called an iteration. An iteration is a posh fancy word for looping. There are two types of loops. One is called a condition controlled loop and one is called a count controlled loop. In this session we're going to focus on the condition controlled loops. Now in Python, the programming language, there is only one form of condition controlled loop, and that is a while loop. This will loop while a condition is true. It's quite useful and I'm going to go through it in this session. So here you can see that I'm using a while loop. So I start off by setting x equal to 0. Then I say while x is less than 10, we're going to print x and x is going to be incremented by 1. So it will print 0 to 9. Now you might think to yourself, why doesn't it print 10? Well, let's go through the command. So, x is 0. Is 0 less than 10? Yes, print 0. Add 1 to it. Now it's 1. Is 1 less than 10? Yes, print it. Add 1. So we get to 9. Is 9 less than 10? Yes, print 9. Now we increase it to 10. And because we go back to do the check again, is 10 less than 10? No. So we exit the loop. Now this is a good chance to talk about the colon and the tabbing in a bit more detail. So let's go over to the program here and get up x equals 0. Let's see, x equals 0 while x is less than 10. Now I had brackets on the PowerPoint, but actually you don't need to have brackets, you just need to have the command. I often put it in brackets, I think it's just that habit. Right. So I'm going to run this, and this will run forever. Or in theory, I mean, at least it'll run until the computer runs out of battery or whatever. Because x is always going to be less than 10 because I'm not changing it. So let's do x equals x plus 1, and you can see the program from before. There you go. So if I wanted it to go from, say, 1 to 10, I'd start it at 1, and then go less than equals to 10. And now it would do 1 to 10. Now, whilst this is one way of using it, it's not really what a while loop is normally used for, which I'll go through in a minute, because the other count control loop is actually a bit better at doing this. That's literally kind of the point of a count control loop. But either loop can be used to sort of create the other one, but one of them is just better in certain situations. So I'm just going to show you something though, because the tabbing is important and it's now time to really bring it up. So often in a while loop, you'll be writing a lot of code. So I'm just going to put this back to normal just to go back to the code from before. So here I'm going 0 to 9 again. Now what if I only wanted to print all the numbers, all the even numbers, okay? So I'll do an if statement. If x mod 2 is equal to 0. Now I don't worry too much about the mod 2, but what that does is it gives you the remainder. So it's going to divide x by 2 and then give you the remainder. So if all even numbers when divided by 2 will give a remainder of 0. So 3 divided by 2, 3 mod 2 will give you 1 because there'll be 1 left over. It's like the remainder in old primary school maths. It'll give you, 1 remainder 1, So 7 mod 2 would give you 3 remainder 1, and mod just gives you the remainder. It's a really useful way for working out if numbers are even or whatever. So now what I'm going to say is if this number is even, print x. But you notice now that I've tabbed in again. Because after a colon, everything is tabbed in. After a colon, we tab in again. So if I had another if in here, like, I don't know, if x is greater than 5, print x. You'll now see that I'm tabbed in again. So this is part of this is part of that, and that is part of that, and that is also part of that because it's tabbed in once along with this colon. It can get quite confusing with these colons, and it's part of the reason I said before for you in the other videos that I don't particularly like the way Python does it with colons, but there you go, it is what it is, and Python is quite an easy language to learn. And you won't often be doing this. Obviously I could have done and x is greater than 5 here if I wanted to do that. But you need to try and just understand that's what the tabbing does. So if I run that now, it'll only give me 0, 2, 4, 6 and 8. Because 0 apparently is even though it's controversial that. So that's what a while loop does. And just remember that it does the test at the top. So it is completely possible with a while loop that it never runs anything inside the loop, because if the first test fails, it will fall straight through the loop. And just so you understand, this is not in while loop because it is not tabbed in. In fact, in the while loop, not in the while loop. In the loop, not in the loop. Okay, so that will just print every time. And even if we do a 0, it will just print once at the end because, oh, that's fine. There you go, it's fine. Okay, so we've covered that. Right, in pseudocode, so that's it in Python, but obviously remember in the exam, they will not write in Python to you because not everyone has learned Python. They will do a pseudocode, so they'll do it in a more Englishy way. Now, you can answer your questions in Python, but they won't give them to you in Python. They'll give them to you in pseudocode. To be honest, it does look very similar. So this is the one there, and this is the version in pseudocode. Once again, the brackets are optional. So x is 0, while x is less than 10, print x. They don't have a colon. The way they know the difference between the start and the end of the while loop, instead of colon and tabbing it in like you do in Python, they have an end at the end while. So basically everything in between those two words is part of the while loop. And it's the same with the if. They have an if and an end if. And everything between those two is part of the if. A lot of people prefer that. I don't mind it. It seems okay. It seems more natural than the colon tabbing in thing. But, you know, anyway, there you go. This is not a real language. This is just a sort of made up way to allow people to talk to each other about programming, even if they don't use the same actual language. It's just common sense English. So, not much difference doing that. Okay, normally, what a while loop is used for is to loop for a certain number of times when you've no idea how many times that is. So, for example, you could loop until they write a letter in, or until they press quit, or you're looping until you find a certain number of letters in a string or something like that, because you're looking for, you know, how many, I don't know, when you find 10 vowels, do something or whatever. So here you can see I've started up a string and set it blank. And then while the string is not equal to Q, I'm going to print a menu out. Don't worry about what this command here does. This is not built into Python. This is a procedure that I would have written somewhere else. We will cover procedures later on. But just understand that prints the menu out. Then I get their response using input. And then if their response is 1, I do another function, 2, 3. And then I end the while. This is very similar in Python, as you can see at the bottom. And then as soon as they type Q, it will quit. Now, let's go and just very quickly try that out in here. So let's do while. I'm just going to put, oh no, we'll put it response is not equal to Q. I'm going to do print menu. I'm not actually going to print the menu, I'm just going to print the menu. And I'm going to go if response is equal to 1. I'm not going to do all three of them, I'm just going to do one of them. Print 1. Obviously it would do something else than print 1 back. Okay, but there you go. So here, you'd think it would run. I haven't got the input, so that's done. Enter response. Right, so here you would think that would run, but of course it won't. And the reason is because it's trying to check what response is, but it doesn't exist. So before a while loop, it's very often that you have to set the condition to be true. So I can set response to anything. I could set it to anything that isn't Q, really, because if I set it to Q, it won't run. It will just go straight through. There you go. It gets done it. There's no... doesn't run at all. Because response is Q, there's nothing in here. Okay? So it's going to go, while response is not equal to Q. Well, it is Q, so it quits straight away. So it is possible with a while loop to not even do the loop once. So what you want to do is make sure you're setting, whatever you set your variables to, it's going to make that condition allow the loop. So now I do it, enter response, R1, there you go, and I hit Q, and then it quits. And there you go. So you can see that it quits. But it's important to note that you must set the variable that you check here to anything first. It doesn't matter where you set it to, you can set it to space, whatever, as long as you don't set it to something that won't work, because otherwise the response will quit straight away. So there we go, Q, and it works. Okay, so that is the code there. Now, this is called a condition controlled loop because it loops on a condition. Now, there is something called a do until loop. Now, it doesn't exist in Python. So let's just delete that and keep this simple, okay? So that's just going to ask them to enter responses until they enter Q. Uppercase Q. Right, so that's just going to do that. Now, you also, just to be clear, you can do or you can do and or in here, like or and, you know. So while response not equal to Q, or response not equal to, you could do other things. But we're not going to do that there because, that would be, you're not showing it. If you wanted to do uppercase, you can do .upper, I think it is. I always forget this one on Python. And then that will turn whatever they type in into uppercase. And then, so if I typed a lowercase q, that would still quit because I've turned it into uppercase. But just so you know, you can do like or and in here as well to add to it. But obviously, it's a bit trickier and not always good. Anyway, so back to do until. So in pseudocode, in the exam, they might use a condition controlled loop called do until. Now this doesn't exist in Python or any programming language that I know. I wish it did because it's quite useful. But it does it slightly different. So in essence, it does the same thing, but it's the opposite. While do while loops while something is true, do until would loop until something is true. So this would be, obviously that'd be double equals. So this would be how it would work in pseudocode. So that would work like that. It doesn't exist in Python. It'd be quite handy. There is one slight difference, and that is that you don't need to set a box at the start, blank, because you obviously here you're making it there. So that's quite. You're not checking it till the end. So that's quite handy because you're making it here. But the only problem is this do until loop will always do one loop because it does a check at the end, whereas a while might not do a loop. And that can be good or bad depending on what you want to code. But as I say, do until doesn't exist in Python. But in the exam, they may use a do until loop. So I'm going to test you on that every now and then because, they might do it. It's a bit weird and I doubt they will because I feel like they won't. But anyway. So here's the two explained next to each other. So here is a while loop. The exact same thing as saw before. And here's the do until version. So print menu, response equals input, and then until response is Q. That probably should be double equals, but anyway. The point is you get the gist of what it is. So do until is only used in pseudocode, maybe in the exam, but on Python you can't do it. So have a go at the worksheet, and then you can move on to the next task.